So in my last video, I mentioned that I had read the novel Well of SHIUAN by C.J. Cherryh, and that I thought that despite its appearance on the surface, that it was actually a very subtle romance novel. And I want to list a few reasons why. Both books I've read so far, Gate of Ivral and Well of SHIUAN, I haven't read the second two in the series yet, are both very subtle romance novels. I'm going to focus on Well of SHIUAN because it's I've read it most recently and it's the freshest in my mind, and there's a specific scene in Well of SHIUAN that I want to focus on to get this point across. In order to make these points, we got to lend a little bit of context to the series as a whole, just in its basic world building, and I'm going to get into the characters, and then I'm going to get into the specific scene, and then there's a few details at the end that I think that lend support to my theory that Well of SHIUAN is a romance novel. Not a romance novel in like the traditional sense. It is a romance novel not in the sense of the strength of the passions of romance, but in the virtues of romance, the virtues of loyalty, integrity, of service to the other person. In those respects, it is a romance novel, not necessarily in like this high drama, high passion. The basic premise of Well of SHIUAN is that in the long past, there were these gates ruled by a certain almost alien, you would say, type of person. And these gates allow people to hop between different planets, and potentially even between like different times, even though that hasn't happened yet in the series. That's given as a possibility that there's a weird time warping effect when people go through these gates. These gates were used to rule the universe, essentially, in this sort of tyrannical, iron-fisted method. So therein there rose up this group of people who dedicated their lives to going through and destroying the gates. And one of these was Morgaine, the principal character in the series, who I'm going to get into. And and this is important here, she has a sword called Changeling, which in its appearance is a sword, but it's actually a type of essentially super weapon that when it's used, it opens up what's essentially a hole in the air that people fall into. You look into it, and it's just this color and this darkness in it that if it's pointed at you, it swarms you in. It's like one of the gates that people travel through, except in miniature, and is the tool by which Morgaine, after passing through a gate, destroys it. And so this is her mission, to go world to world to find the master gate of that world and destroy it. It's an endless quest just to keep going on to all the different worlds and destroying all the different gates. There in the first novel, Gate of Ivral, she meets Vanier. Now Vanier is a disgraced nobleman who is sent out. He ends up killing one of his brothers in self-defense, but through this, he's branded an outlaw, a disgraced outlaw, and he's cast out of his family home, and he by chance encounters Morgaine. And Vanier is from this society with a very strict honor code, a very strict, very formalized code of honor, code of conduct. And through this, Morgaine is able to force Vanier's hand to swear loyalty to her for a certain amount of time. Now, that's in Gate of Ivral. At different points, she offers him his freedom, but Vanier always refuses. And he articulates this refusal in his mind through the eyes of this honor code, because this code of honor, it's not just a philosophy that he has brought into himself. It's what has shaped him. He is shaped entirely by this code of honor, and that's how he views everything. Even his wants, he doesn't view them as his wants, but as something to be granted or denied based on this code of honor. And that's part of that the loyalty aspect of the virtues of romance. And loyalty is Vanier's loyalty to Morgaine, despite circumstances, despite getting the opportunity to go free and do his own thing, even though he's uncertain about who she is in her past. One of the things about Morgaine is that Vanier's people and the people of the world they're in Well of SHIUAN, they travel from Vanier's world to a different one, even though the people are similar. Everyone views Morgaine as some sort of witch, and they fear her, they respect her, but they do not trust her. And at different times, they try to undermine her because they think she's a greater danger than could exist in the gates, and than could exist in any normal king or ruler. And here we get to a specific scene in SHIUAN that I think illustrates why these are, in fact, romance novels, though written very subtly so that the romantic aspects are not in your face or oppressive. So in SHIUAN, they end up at a keep. Vanya and Morgaine were separated for a time. Vanya ends up at this keep, and then later Morgaine comes in with this kind of rabble army, and she takes over the keep. And so they're in this position where Vanya sees himself as beset on enemies by all sides. He thinks at any moment there might be trouble. And so in these instances, as they have done in the past, Vanya and Morgaine take turns keeping the watch in order to, so one person is awake and they can't be ambushed while they sleep. So Morgaine takes the first watch while Vanya sleeps. And at a certain point in the night, Vanya wakes up and he's just laying in bed to rest until Morgaine comes to give him the next watch while she gets some rest. What ends up happening to Vanya's surprise is that Morgaine, instead of waking him up and sending him out of the room for the next watch, she just goes into the other side of the bed. And there's nothing vulgar or sexual about this scene, just so we're clear here. But he's surprised that she would rest next to him and just let that happen. But she reassures him that like the door is bolted from the inside, like it's a very strong door, so that there's likely no possibility that they will be attacked in the night. But while they're there, this sword changeling is a sword that Vanya fears. It's repulsive to him as an object of witchcraft, and for how deadly it is. It's a thing he looks at as when people disappear into the sword, sucked into this void. He views it as them being condemned, them being damned to some sort of hell, that it destroys a man's soul, and so for that reason, it's repulsive to him. But the sword, what you need to understand, like because it is like the gates, it in the story represents Morgaine's mission to destroy the gates. It is that representation of all Morgaine's attitudes and her mission in life to destroy the gates and to end everything that they stand for. So when Vanya is on one side of the bed and Morgaine's on the other side of the bed, Morgaine, who never leaves Changeling out of her reach, puts the sword between them in the middle. And it stays there. And this is in the romance aspect, reading into this, this represents Morgaine's mission coming between the natural loyalty and affection that Vanya and Morgaine feel towards one another. When Morgaine gets into the bed, Vanya is about to leave. Like he naturally thinks he's just going to get out of bed and take his watch, even though she hasn't stated that it's his turn for the watch. And she says, "Hey, you can stay in the bed if you want to," and he does. And what's that's showing from Morgaine's point of view is that she has this opportunity to send Vanya out, but she keeps him near. She wants his presence nearby. And Vanya, he has this opportunity to leave, to get away from this woman that he sort of fears, but it fulfills this great loyalty to. And he gets this opportunity to leave, but he stays. That's that general unstated attraction they feel towards one another, being shown in the scene without beating you over the head with it, is that they want to be in each other's proximity. But yet there's this sword between them, right? That's keeping them separated in that way. And that's that mission often is the source of all the drama. The conflict between Vanya and Morgaine's ideals is her mission to destroy all the gates. And I think that scene in and of itself shows more than any other example that these are romance novels. And aiding to that are the different characters within the story that interact with Morgaine and Vanya. The opening chapters are from the point of view of a character called Jiroon, who is a character that is much like Morgaine. She's more or less an outcast, somebody who's branded as a fae or a half-witch, sort of a seer type, and people fear her at the same time sort of reject her company. They don't like having her around because of superstition. And when Jiran first meets up with Vanya and Morgaine, Vanya is disposed to show her some sort of mercy. And I should state this. There's also another comparison between Jiran and Morgaine, is that Jiran, when she meets up with Vanya, Jiran is in possession of a special type of blade. Now, it's not special in the way that Changeling is special. It's a normal piece of steel, but it has a special purpose, and it is from a different world than the one Jiran is from. And in that way, this is another comparison between Jiran and Morgaine, just in those, it's building a thematic link between the two so that you can think about it in those terms. So when Jiran and Vanya meet, Vanya is disposed to show her some mercy, to plead with Morgaine to keep Jiran around, even though Morgaine is against it. And it's an example of Morgaine really showing some jealousy that somebody else would be receiving the attention, the service, even a small part of the service that Vanya has sworn to her, right? Vanya is Morgaine's servant, her servant, her bodyguard, her protector, in a sense. And when he starts showing a little bit of service and protection to somebody else, Morgaine gets a little bit jealous, it seems. Now, it's not stated outright, but that's the underlying subtext of that relationship. Now, later on, Morgaine gets a different view of what's happening, and she then shows Jiran a bit different, a bit mercy herself in the later halves of the book. And then another character that's put up as a parallel towards Vanya, is introduced more towards the middle of the book, is a character called Kithan. And getting into more spoilers for the end of the book, Kithan is a nobleman whose noble house, his family, is destroyed. More or less destroyed by the efforts of Morgaine, which is another parallel to Vanya in the first book, Gate of Ivral. Is Morgaine does a lot in that book that it ultimately ends up undermining the familial connections Vanya has. But in Well of SHIUAN, Kithan's whole house is brought down by Morgaine's efforts and the efforts of a different sorcerer called Ro. And at the end of the book, everyone's gone through the gate of this world, which is the title Well of SHIUAN, is one of these gates. And at the end, everybody has gone through it, Morgaine and Vanya included, except for Jiran and Kithan. They're the only two who don't exit through the gate. And they end up, Jiran and Kithan end up together, and the context of the final chapter of the book implies that the two of them are not in love, but they are on an item. Their intention is to find a quiet place in the world and just wait out the end, because Jiran's world is being flooded. It will be destroyed. All the people on it will be destroyed in nobody knows how long, 100, 1,000 years, but the end is coming, and relatively soon. But those two, this witch and this disgraced nobleman without a house, they end up paired together to live out the rest of their days in quiet tranquility, or the closest they can find to it. And depending on how you read that, you could either read that as Jiran and Kithan, these parallels to Morgaine and Vanya, are able to find a peace and happiness that is denied to Morgaine and Vanya because of Morgaine's quest. Or you could see that as a sort of subtle promise that ultimately Morgaine and Vanya will find this tranquility. Like at the end of everything, they have found a way to quit striving. They will find not necessarily happiness, like this overwhelming joy, but a peace, an end to struggle, in that sense. And it's another comparison there between Jiran and Morgaine, is that Jiran is all the time striving after the Well of SHIUAN because she wants to pass through the gate to reach a new world. But at the end, she decides against it, which, like I say, like on its own, Maris, like Jiran's decision not to pass through the gate can seem a bit strange, but when you read it in that she's a shadow, a parallel of Morgaine, Jiran and Kithan are parallel of Morgaine and Vanya, her decision not to pass through the gate, like I say, it could be sort of a token of doom that Morgaine and Vanya will never have peace, never have this quiet moment to stop striving, stop struggling. Will continually just always be questing after new gates to destroy. Or it could be just a very small, quiet whisper of a promise that, yeah, ultimately one day Morgaine and Vanya will have peace and this tranquility. Like I say, the books themselves, even if you don't read them as necessarily like a romance novel, the way I see it, there's a lot in there as far as like epic crusader type actions. This sort of house politics that is popular in certain types of fantasy. They're really good books. They're well written on their own merits, despite whatever kind of themes or whatever you're getting out of them. They are well written books and worth checking out. And I look forward to in the next few months picking up Fires of Azeroth, which is the third book and sort of the cap of a trilogy. And then there was a fourth book written much, much later. I look forward to looking at those sometime next year. Anyways, that's all I got to say about that. So, see you later.